Have you ever finished a book, listened to a podcast, gone to a seminar, watched a powerful video, and felt that rush, that feeling of, this is it. This is the thing I needed. This time, I'm actually going to change. You feel lighter, clearer, more motivated. You start imagining the new version of your life, the habits you'll finally build, the confidence you'll finally have, the work you'll finally get done, the person you're finally going to become. And for a little while, it feels real. Maybe for a day, a week, maybe even longer. Then slowly, almost quietly, the old pattern comes back. The same avoidance, the same self-doubt, the same way of shrinking right before you take the step that matters. And then comes the worst part. You don't just feel stuck. You feel disappointed in yourself because you had the insight. You felt the motivation. You knew what to do. So the mind starts asking, what's wrong with me? Why can't I follow through? Why do I keep needing another book, another podcast, another breakthrough, another plan? That cycle is what I want to talk about in this video, because I don't think most people need more self-help. I think they need to understand why self-help so often fails to reach the part of them that's actually running the pattern. And if this resonates, I've put together a free subconscious starter kit that can help you begin understanding how deeper patterns shape your thoughts, emotions, and behavior. You can find the link below. But let's begin with the strange high that self-help can give you. The self-help high is real. That's why it works so well as an industry. A great book can wake something up in you. A powerful speaker can remind you of what's possible. A strong idea can give language to something you've felt for years but never fully understood. That's powerful. I'm not here to dismiss that. I've read books that genuinely moved me. I've listened to people who changed how I saw myself. I've walked away from events feeling like some part of me had been reintroduced to possibility. But the feeling of possibility is not the same as transformation. And this is where many people get caught. Insight can feel like change. Motivation can feel like change. A new framework can feel like change. For a little while, the emotional state shifts. You feel hopeful. You feel ready. You may even take a few new actions. Then your deeper patterns begin to reassert themselves. The old emotional rehearsal returns. The old identity returns. The old fear returns. The old story returns. And because the self-help industry often sells the feeling of change, many people mistake that feeling for the actual work of change. It's like standing in a bookstore holding a map of a mountain and feeling inspired by the route. The map matters. The route matters. But reading the map is not the climb. You can highlight every page. You can understand the trail. You can explain the summit beautifully. Then your legs start shaking 10 minutes into the ascent. That's where the real work begins. Self-help often gives us maps. Some of those maps are excellent, but a map doesn't train your body for the climb. A map doesn't calm the fear that comes up when the path gets steep. A map doesn't change the part of you that turns around whenever the terrain starts to feel unfamiliar. That's one reason people get stuck in what I think of as the advice loop. They read something, they feel hope, they try to change, the old pattern returns. They assume they need a better idea, so they search again. Another book, another podcast, another video, another morning routine, another productivity system, another mindset shift, another promise that this time things will finally click. And sometimes the next idea is useful. But if the pattern underneath never changes, the person eventually just becomes very educated about their own challenges. They can name the pattern, explain the pattern, analyze the pattern, maybe even teach the pattern to someone else, and still live inside it. That's a painful place to be, because now you're not only stuck, you're self-aware enough to watch yourself repeat the same thing. Self-help can give you language for the pattern without changing the pattern. That's one of the hardest truths to accept. A person can know they procrastinate because they fear judgment. They can know they people please because they're afraid of disappointing others. They can know they overwork because their worth is tied to productivity. They can know they avoid visibility because being seen doesn't feel safe. And still, when the moment arrives, the old response takes over. The procrastination or self-doubt kicks in. The old pattern wins again. That doesn't mean the insight was useless. It means insight entered one level of the system while the pattern was operating from another. Most self-help speaks to the conscious mind. It says, set the goal, choose the habit, think differently, be disciplined, change your mindset, decide who you are, take action. All of that can be helpful. But many of the patterns that keep people stuck are not sitting neatly in conscious thought, waiting for a better sentence. They live in the subconscious expectation of what will happen again. So if someone says, just put yourself out there, that advice may sound simple to the conscious mind. But if visibility is associated with criticism, rejection, embarrassment, or losing belonging, another part of the person hears something very different. The conscious mind hears, share your work. The deeper system hears, risk exposure and judgment, risk finding out you're not enough. That's why the person doesn't move, or moves for a week, then retreats. The advice may be good, the level may be wrong. Imagine someone telling you to relax while you're standing on the edge of a cliff. Technically, relaxing might help, but your body is not responding to the instruction. Your body is responding to the perceived danger. That's what happens with many subconscious patterns. The instruction goes in at one level, the alarm is sounding at another. This is where people often start blaming themselves. They think, I must not want it badly enough. I must be lazy. But maybe the problem is not that you failed the advice. Maybe the advice never reached the part of you that needed to change. A book can help you understand why you're stuck. A podcast can help you feel less alone. A speaker can give you a spark. But if your subconscious still associates the next level with danger, guilt, shame, rejection, or loss of belonging, information alone may not be enough to move you. This is why the phrase, just do it, can be so frustrating. If the only obstacle were lack of information, most people would already be transformed. Most people know what they need to do. The deeper question is, why does the old pattern still feel safer? That question changes everything. Now we're no longer asking, what advice do I need? We're asking, what does my system believe would happen if I actually changed? This is not a surface level question. It lives closer to the roots. This is where subconscious work becomes important. The subconscious is not some mystical, hidden villain trying to ruin your life. It is the part of you that is learned through repetition, emotion, imagery, association, identity, and survival. It learns what feels normal, what feels dangerous, what feels allowed, what feels like you. And once something becomes familiar enough, the subconscious will often pull you back toward it, even if it's painful. Familiar hiding, familiar self-doubt. The mind may say, I want something different, but the deeper system says, this is what we know. That's why so many people experience what I call the self-help crash. They get lifted by a new idea, then pulled back by an old pattern. The intention was real, the motivation was real, but the subconscious familiarity did not change. And when familiarity doesn't change, the old life keeps feeling like home, even when it hurts. There's a metaphor I like for this. Imagine someone who wants to learn to swim. They buy the best book on swimming. They watch videos of great swimmers. They learn the mechanics of the stroke. They understand breathing. They study form. They can explain buoyancy. They can talk about swimming with real intelligence. Then they get into the water, and their body panics. The book was useful. The understanding was real. But the body still has to learn that the water can hold them. That learning happens through experience, through repetition, through practice at the level of the body, not just the intellect. Change works like that too. You can read about confidence, but your system has to experience being seen and staying safe. You can read about calm, but your system has to experience stillness without immediately trying to recreate pressure. Self-help gives you the instruction. Subconscious work helps your system experience the new pattern as safe enough to keep. That's the missing piece. And this is why some of the best advice in the world still won't land if the person's inner blueprint is organized against it. Your blueprint is the hidden collection of beliefs, rules, stories, identity statements, emotional associations, and expectations that shape what feels normal, possible, safe, and true. Self-help often tells you what to do. Your blueprint determines whether that action feels possible. A book or seminar may tell you to act like the person you want to become, but your blueprint may say, people like me don't do that. So the conscious advice may be accurate, the subconscious permission may be missing. That's where the real work begins. And this is also where I want to be careful. I'm not saying self-help is useless. Far from it. Not at all. Some of it is excellent. A good book can open your mind. A good framework can give you structure. A good teacher can help you see something you couldn't see before. But insight is the doorway. It's not the whole house. The danger comes when people keep standing in the doorway, mistaking the relief of seeing for the work of becoming. There's an old Zen saying, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. I've always liked that because it cuts through the fantasy of the magical breakthrough. Even after the insight, life still has to be lived. The work still needs doing. The nervous system still needs new experiences. The subconscious still needs repetition. The new identity still needs evidence. Real change is usually less glamorous than the breakthrough moment. It's quieter, more repetitive. It's the moment you see the old pattern and choose not to rehearse it again. And then you do it again, and again, and again, until the new response starts to feel less like a performance and more like you. That's the part self-help often underestimates. A person doesn't become new because they heard a better idea once. They become new when a different pattern becomes emotionally believable. That requires more than information. It requires practice, safety, and repetition. It requires working with the subconscious associations that have been running the old life. So if you've been stuck in the self-help loop, I want you to consider a gentler possibility. Maybe you haven't failed. Maybe you've been trying to use insight for a job that requires rewiring. Maybe you've been asking a book to do what only repeated emotional experience can do. Maybe you've been collecting maps when what you really need now is to train your system for the climb. That shift can be humbling, but freeing. It means you don't have to keep chasing the next idea as if the next one will finally rescue you. You can begin asking better questions. What pattern keeps coming back after the motivation fades? What does that pattern protect me from feeling? What does my subconscious still associate with the change I say I want? What would need to feel safe for this new life to become familiar? Those questions move you out of the advice loop and into deeper work. And that's the work we focus on inside Subconscious Academy, helping you understand the patterns underneath the patterns, the rules, stories, identity statements, emotional associations, and subconscious rehearsals that shape what feels possible for you. Lasting change doesn't come from yelling louder at the conscious mind. It comes from helping the deeper system feel safe enough to become someone new. So, self-help resources, the books, the podcasts, the seminars can all be helpful. They've helped millions of people. But self-help becomes a trap when it keeps you consuming insight without changing the pattern. It becomes a trap when it gives you the feeling of growth without the deeper work of transformation. It becomes a trap when you keep blaming yourself for not changing, instead of realizing the advice may never have reached the level where the pattern lives. If this helped you recognize there may be more happening beneath the surface than you realized, I've put together a free subconscious starter kit to help you begin understanding how these deeper patterns shape your thoughts, emotions, and behavior. You can find the link below. For now, carry this question with you. Am I changing the pattern or just collecting more advice about it? Remember, breakthroughs begin within. Bye for now.